Hello again, welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is BGFH back for another iOS video. And today I just want to take you through a quick couple of updates that have happened since iOS 7 has come out. There has been the release of iOS 7.1 and then 7.1.1 or 7.11, whatever it is, I forget. But there's been a couple of minor updates that have addressed some bugs and added a couple of other accessibility issues and a couple of other things. So those are the things that I want to cover quickly today. So let's jump right into it here. Let me get my AirPlay going here on my iPad. I remember I have to start this I have to start recording before I go to my tablet, otherwise my recording software goes a little crazy on me. So we have our iPad up, we got it in landscape here. In iOS 7.1 and beyond, all of the accessibility stuff that has been introduced in 7.0 or iOS 7 is still there. But if you remember back to my original iOS 7 video where I showed you both the iPad and the iPhone, one of my major complaints, and one of the complaints that I and many other low vision users have, is the overall visual style of iOS 7. It's really kind of this flattened, pastel looking, and a lot of bright white and plain text instead of buttons, so things blend in. I talked a lot about that in the previous video. They've addressed some of that, kind of. It is better, but I think they still could definitely improve things a bit. But I will show you what they've done so far. So let's go into settings here. And again, I don't have my iPad connected to any major speaker or anything. I'm just basically using it close to my microphone. Settings. And it should be pretty loud. So I've got settings. Let's go to where, make sure we're in general.
Selected. General.
Yep,
Button.
we are. So let's go to
Text side.
accessibility.
Selected. Settings.
And I'm going to go through the first couple of areas just to make sure I don't miss anything. So
Zoom. Voiceover. On.
Voiceover, I think there wasn't really much added in there. Nothing really changed. I will mention, if you are running 7.1 but you haven't grabbed the 7.1.1 or 7.11 update, I would recommend doing so, because in iOS 7.1 they introduced a couple of bugs with Bluetooth keyboards. If you're using like a Bluetooth QWERTY keyboard, where if you were using VoiceOver, what would happen is you would hit the control key by itself to, stop VoiceOver speaking, basically the shut up key, and then your keyboard would not respond, and you would have to jump out to a different application and come back, and usually that would fix it. But there was just some really quirkiness that was happening with iOS 7 with VoiceOver and the Bluetooth keyboards. So that has been fixed in the latest iOS update. So if you're kind of in the middle there, you've got the 7.1 but not the latest patch, go just up to your, in settings, go to your software update, and you can grab it right over the air. It's pretty small. So I do want to just let you guys know of that if you are experiencing those issues, because it was a pretty hot topic on Apple Viz for a while there.
Invert color. Zoom.
Zoom, that's pretty much the same. Nothing has changed there.
Invert colors. Off.
Invert colors, those are the same.
Speak selection. Off.
Speak selection.
Speak auto text.
Speak auto text. All those are the same. So the second...
Automatically speak auto correction. Larger text. Off.
Okay, so larger text, that's still the same.
Bold text. On.
Bold text is the same.
To toggle setting. Button shapes. On.
Button shapes. This is new in iOS 7.1. And I would probably recommend that you do enable this feature. If you notice, if you look toward the top middle of my screen,
General. Back button.
you see that back button. Remember in iOS 7, where it was basically just a static link that may or may not be underlined, or it was just straight up text, and it really didn't stand out, especially if you had a lot of other controls or text from the body of your app surrounding it. Well, now it actually does stand out a little bit better. I kind of still miss the old buttons, but hey, I'll take it.
Button shapes. On.
Button shapes is
Double
on.
tap to increase contrast. On.
Increase contrast. Let's go in here because this section has a couple of subsections here. So I'm going to go in here.
Settings. Heading. Reduce
And
transparency. Reduce transparency. On.
Reduce transparency. This will make it so that basically, you know, kind of like how Windows 7 and basically Windows 7, like with the Windows Arrow theme, you see a little bit of bleed through, like if you have a toolbar in front of something or like a little pop-up window, some of the background will be kind of, you can see through the front window into the back, and that makes it really harder to see, especially, you know, if you have contrast problems with reading. That will get rid of a lot of those issues.
Darken colors. On.
Darken colors, you know, I don't notice a huge change, but I would recommend enabling this because remember when I showed you the iOS 7 video, you see on this screen in particular, you see each one of these settings. Those are bright white.
Double tap to toggle settings.
And then in between you have these separators, and then this big chunk on the bottom here, it's a gray. So it has darkened that a little bit. If I turn that off, see, I don't really notice much of a difference, to be honest.
Darken colors. Off. On.
In some areas, I guess you notice it more than others. The other setting that we have,
Reduce white point. On.
reduce white point. I'm not exactly sure. To me, it almost just seems like they dimmed this. It's almost like well, instead of cranking your brightness up to, 95 to 100%, we're going to dim it down to, I don't know, 60 or 70. I don't know if it really affects the brightness of other, non-white colors, like every other color. But it does definitely dim the display a little bit, so it's not quite so harsh, especially, I turn my phone or my tablet on in a dark room and just get, oh God, completely blinded by the whiteness of everything.
Reduce white point.
Let me turn that off. Yeah, you can instantly notice that. Let me see how it looks on the monitor here. Yeah, I can see it more on my tablet itself, more than I can when I'm looking at my computer screen here, the mirroring, but it's definitely noticeable. So, it is nice to have. I do prefer having it on, although, like I said, I'm still kind of curious to know if it dims everything or if it's just actually dimming the white color. Everything still seems to look pretty good, at least to my eyes, so that's another setting worth noting. Those are really the main couple of accessibility features they've added in iOS 7. I'm going to go to the home screen, and I'm going to bring up the keyboard so you can see. They have actually made the keyboard, the keys and the letters stand out a little bit more. This is actually one of the keyboards that I really, really like. And I wish I could have this keyboard everywhere. Like right now we're looking at this dark gray keyboard with white letters, and then like your enter key and your control or all your little keys around the perimeter of your keyboard are even, they're darker, but everything stands out super nice here. And rather than just inverting colors, because like I said, that messes with all your colors, pictures and everything, what I really, really would love Apple to do is basically make a night mode sort of color scheme that would take what you see on this keyboard here and just make your general settings look make your apps look that way. Everywhere that you have a white background, your mail, your settings, your calendar, all those types of things, make them look this way, because I would, it won't affect the actual pictures, like if there's images or icons or whatever it happens to be, it won't necessarily affect those, but it would just make things so much nicer and so much easier to read. I would absolutely love to have this color scheme. So like if I go into,
8 apps.
let's go to my App Store.
App Store. Selected. App Store.
And
Category, 4 chords. Search field.
so let's
Double
do
tap
a
to
search.
field. Clear text. Button.
So now you see the typical,
Search.
shut up, there we go. You see the typical keyboard. Now you do notice that the keys do, or the letters on the keys do stand out a lot more. They're a lot more bold font, and it's not bad, but I really, really love the other keyboard, the dark keyboard with the light letters, and I wish I could choose that option everywhere. And you know, let me go back into the settings again.
Settings.
Just imagine having like the gray that you would see on the keys on that home screen keyboard. Put that for the background here. Make the actual text white. That would be beautiful. You could even keep the blue for like the highlighting on the left or something. But like I said, a lot of people with low vision are light sensitive and glare sensitive. So just having that other option would be really nice. So I may be missing one or two things as far as iOS 7 updates,
Double tap to open.
but those are the main accessibility things that I can think of that they updated, and if I missed any, I apologize. But I did mention the keyboard issue in iOS 7, or iOS 7.1, so if you have that, make sure to update to the 7.1.1 patch. You can do that right over the air on any of your devices. I was going to record this video earlier, a week or two ago, but around the time that iOS 7.1 came out, I actually ended up having a problem with my iPhone 5, and I thought it was something to do with something that had changed or broken in iOS 7.1, so I wanted to wait until I figured out the problem in order to talk about that on the video. And I did actually end up fixing the problem, and it actually had nothing to do with iOS 7 or 7.1. But what would happen is I would be using my phone, and it would work beautifully, not a problem. Everything worked as it should. And then it would,
Settings.
typically around 25 to 35 or 20, 15, anywhere between 50 and 40% usually, but closer to 20%. The phone would just randomly shut off. It wouldn't just go to sleep. It would literally shut itself off. And it wasn't specific to any app. It was just one time I was listening to music. One time I had just picked up the phone on a phone call. Another time I was just reading email. One time I was on the home screen. And it started happening fairly frequently. I'm like, what is going on? When it worked, it was great, but it just kept shutting itself off. And I did some online research, and I tried all kinds of different things, and resetting settings, and basically everything short of doing a whole device reset to factory, because I don't use iTunes to back things up, because you by now know my opinion of iTunes, and I really avoid it if possible. And I didn't feel like just re-downloading and putting all my apps and folders back together. So I ended up looking. I forget where it is. Let me see if maybe I can find it. Let's see.
Zoom. Off. Button.
Let's go
Select
back to.
General.
Is it under General?
Select software about.
Yeah, I think it's under
Name.
About.
Settings. Videos. Songs. Name. Jesse S. Model. Bluetooth. Diagnostics usage.
Okay, yes. So you go under your General and you go under About.
Settings. Heading.
And you go to Diagnostics and Settings. This is what clued me into thinking that, hey, I think there's a hardware problem here. What I did.
Selected. Automatically send. Dante send. Diagnostic usage data. Button.
And then you go under this diagnostic usage data. And under here, there's just a
Heading.
boatload of just cryptic stuff that you can read. Like, it'll have things for app crashes. There were entries that I found where it did shut down, where my device shut down. And what I found...
Latest crash app store IPs. Button.
Okay, so let's say I'll go into this App Store crash.
Heading.
Oh, and you're not going to give me any data? Come on, really?
Data. Back button.
How nice.
Odd 2014 05 01 001400 387 consolidated metric clock. Button.
Okay, whatever that means, but...
Settings. Heading.
All right, so, I mean, they all look a little bit different, but you just get a whole load of this data. And a lot of it isn't probably going to make sense to you. I know a lot of it really didn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me. But when I was going through, let me go back.
Data. Back button.
When I was going through these logs, you know, there were some,
0014.
hush, there were some that referred to a shutdown or a battery something or other. And when I went in there, I noticed that as part of this whole log process, in one of them I could tell what my device was doing at the time. So one of them I saw, in the middle of music playback, the Slacker radio app. And I knew exactly what time that, I knew right when that happened because I remembered that happening. And then I also noticed later on below that my battery, under the battery status, there was two lines that said one for standby time and one for active time. I don't remember the exact words they use, but basically your active time is how much you're actually using your device. So when your screen is unlocked and you're actually doing stuff. And then your standby time is like, you're not turning the unit completely off, but you just, you put it in sleep. You just hit the little lock or you shut it off. And then, when you wake it up again to use it. But what I noticed is that those two times were exactly the same. And there were a couple of cases where those two run times were exactly the same. And that is actually a bad thing because especially think about a phone. I'm not using my phone typically, straight for 14 hours. I might use my phone for 5 or 6 or 8 hours. But your actual run time should be lower than your standby time. So I'm thinking, okay, either the battery needs to be recalibrated, or I have a crap battery, or something. So I ended up taking it into the Apple Store, and I took it in. They did a diagnostic on it. It was under AppleCare, so it didn't actually cost me anything. But I took it in, and they looked at it, and they said, "Oh, yeah, right away we got a warranty, or we got a warning that says, yeah, your battery is shot." So that's why I was not getting it didn't last as long on a charge, and it was, like I said, randomly shutting the unit completely off. Sometimes I could turn it on again, and sometimes I couldn't. And luckily I had my battery in my Mophie case, because I would turn that on for a second, and then it would be like, oh, okay, I'll turn on again. And without doing that, sometimes it wouldn't, sometimes it wouldn't. So it was really kind of an iffy prospect there for about a week or two while I was troubleshooting. So long story short, that's why I didn't upload the video, this particular video with the few accessibility settings earlier, is because I was troubleshooting and I wanted to make sure that, just like the keyboard issue they introduced in iOS 7.1, I wanted to make sure that the shutdown problems that I was having with my iPhone were not a cause of iOS 7.1. So whether it was or wasn't, I could actually report that to you guys accurately. So yeah, a little longer video than I originally anticipated, but in addition to the actual updates, I figured if you are having trouble with your device, it is a good idea. Things are really starting to act funny. If you get a lot of app crashes or weird behavior, go under the general settings area, and then about, and then the diagnostics area. I mean, just poke around in there a little bit, read a little bit. Some of it you may not be able to understand, but you may at least be able to kind of, troubleshoot your way through, I mean, you can do Google searches for symptoms, which, I did a lot of, but if you want to pinpoint it a little bit more and before you take it to the Apple store, not just don't go in and be like, my thing is broken, fix it. The more you can give them information about what it's doing and what you tried, all that kind of stuff, that will help. So with that, I think that'll wrap it up here. Hope you guys found this helpful. And